Nobody saw this coming. And that is exactly what makes this moment so electric, so visceral, and so impossible to ignore, because when the draw was released and tennis fans around the world zoomed in on that one particular bracket, social media didn't just light up. It erupted, because right there, printed in plain black and white against the sun-drenched backdrop of Indian Wells, was a collision that the tennis world had been quietly whispering about for months. Two names, two rising forces, two contrasting styles of play that were always going to meet eventually. And now the moment has finally arrived, and the experts, the analysts, the former champions, the commentators who have spent decades studying this game, are not just surprised, they are genuinely, visibly, deeply in shock, because nobody expected it to happen this fast. Nobody expected this particular chapter to be written at this particular tournament. And yet here we are, standing at the edge of something that could define a generation of women's tennis. And if you think you already know how this story ends, I promise you don't, because what is about to unfold at the BNP Paribas Open is not just a tennis match, it is a statement, it is a reckoning, it is the kind of contest that people will reference for years when they talk about the moment everything changed. Alex Eala has been building towards something extraordinary for the better part of 2 years now, and anyone who has been paying attention, really paying attention, has seen the signs, the quiet but unmistakable signals that this young Filipina from Manila was not here to simply participate in the WTA Tour. She was here to conquer it, and every match, every victory, every hard-fought set played under the blazing lights of the biggest arenas in the world has been another brick in the foundation of something genuinely historic, because Alex Eala is not a feel-good story. She is not a surprise wild card. She is not the underdog people used to politely cheer for before expecting her to lose. She is a legitimate, dangerous, technically brilliant tennis player who has now proven beyond any reasonable doubt that she belongs at the very highest level of this sport. And Indian Wells 2026 is the stage where that truth is about to be broadcast to the entire world in the loudest possible way. But what makes this moment even more extraordinary is the opponent waiting on the other side of the net, because Linda Noskova is not just any player. She is a force of nature with a forehand that tennis analysts have been struggling to properly describe, a weapon so compact, so explosive, so devastatingly efficient that veteran coaches watching her warm up for the first time have reportedly stopped mid-sentence and simply stared, because there is something almost mechanical about the precision with which she delivers that shot, the backswing barely visible, the contact point perfectly timed, the ball leaving the strings with a velocity that most players need a full second to generate but Noskova somehow produces in half the time, and that difference, that fraction of a second, is the difference between a ball you can defend and a ball that has already passed you before your brain has even processed what just happened. And that is the puzzle that Alex Eala now has to solve in front of thousands of fans inside Stadium 1 and millions more watching from every corner of the globe. The history between these two players stretches back further than most casual fans realize. Back to the junior circuit, where both of them were carving out reputations as the future of the game, and they did cross paths in those junior tournaments, they did compete, and the results from those early encounters have been dug up and dissected on every major tennis forum and broadcast desk in the past 48 hours. But here is the truth that every serious analyst has been quick to point out: junior tennis and WTA tennis are entirely different universes, and the player Alex Eala was at 14 or 15 bears almost no resemblance to the player she is right now. The same way the Noskova who played on clay in junior Grand Slams is a completely different animal from the one who has been dismantling top 50 opponents with breathtaking efficiency on the hard courts of the North American swing. So while the junior history provides a romantic narrative thread, it provides almost no tactical insight, and both camps know it and both players know it, and that is part of what makes the tension so palpable, because this is genuinely uncharted territory for both of them at the highest level. And then something completely unexpected happened in the lead-up to this match that shifted the entire conversation. Because Eala's performance in her previous round was not just a victory, it was a declaration, the kind of performance that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up if you understand what you're watching. The kind of tennis that has coaches in other players' boxes leaning forward and quietly saying, "We have a problem." And the analysts who had been cautiously optimistic about Eala's chances against Noskova suddenly found themselves upgrading their predictions in real time. Not because the matchup had changed on paper, but because of what they saw in Alex Eala's eyes, in the way she moved, in the way she constructed points with a maturity and intelligence that belied her 20 years, and in the way she never once looked uncertain, never once retreated mentally even when the match got tight, because mental toughness is the one currency in professional tennis that cannot be faked and cannot be borrowed, and Alex Eala has been spending it freely all tournament long. What happens next will determine whether this match becomes a landmark or a lesson, But the tactical picture is already being drawn in vivid detail by everyone who has studied both players carefully, and the central thesis is this: Alex Eala's left-handedness is not just an inconvenience for Noskova, it is a structural problem because that lefty forehand slicing cross-court pulls Noskova into her backhand corner, and that backhand corner is precisely where her game becomes most vulnerable, where the slice appears instead of the winner, where the open court opens up like a door swinging wide, and Eala is absolutely the kind of player who will walk right through that door without a moment's hesitation. And if she can establish that pattern early, if she can impose that geometry on the match from the first game of the first set, then Noskova will have to solve a puzzle she has genuinely not encountered in this form before, and solving new puzzles under pressure is where mental toughness either holds or cracks, and every expert on the circuit will tell you that Noskova, for all her physical brilliance, is still proving herself in that department. But here is the question that nobody has a clean answer to: what happens in the middle of the court? Because both of these players love the down-the-line ball, both of them want to dictate from the baseline, both of them will be competing for the same real estate in the center of the court, and Noskova has the raw power advantage that could simply overwhelm those exchanges if Eala doesn't find a way to break the rhythm. And that is where the variety comes in, because Alex Eala is not a one-dimensional baseliner. She has shown the ability to slice, to drop shot, to change pace at exactly the right moment, and that unpredictability is a weapon that raw power alone cannot neutralize. And if she can mix those elements in intelligently, if she can keep Noskova guessing just enough to prevent her from settling into that devastating forehand groove, then the match becomes something much more complicated for the Czech player than a simple power contest. The crowd at Indian Wells will be a factor. It always is. And the energy that follows Alex Eala onto that court is unlike anything most players her age have ever experienced, because she carries with her the hopes and the pride of an entire nation, millions of Filipinos watching from halfway around the world in the middle of the night, waking up at impossible hours because they would not miss this for anything, because what Alex Eala represents transcends sport in the way that only the rarest athletes ever manage. She is proof of something, a living, breathing argument that geography is not destiny, that a girl from Manila can walk onto the same court as the best players in the world and not just compete but dominate, and that weight, which would crush most people, seems to fuel her instead, seems to make her sharper and more focused and more dangerous, and that psychological edge over an opponent who is still establishing her own identity on the biggest stages may prove to be the deciding factor when the match reaches its most critical moments, when the pressure is at its absolute peak and the only thing standing between victory and defeat is the willingness to believe completely in yourself. The tennis world is watching, the experts are in shock, the fans are electric, and somewhere in the locker rooms and practice courts of Indian Wells right now, two extraordinary young women are preparing to write the next chapter of a rivalry that has only just begun. And whatever happens when that first ball is struck and the crowd roars and the cameras zoom in on two faces that are absolutely certain of their own greatness, one thing is already certain: this match will be remembered. This moment will be referenced, and the player who walks off that court with the victory will have announced themselves to the world in a way that cannot be taken back or qualified or minimized, because Indian Wells in 2026 is the stage, and the stage is set, and the only thing left to do now is watch.